Angus Gidley-Baird is Senior Proteins Analyst at Rabobank, and you're not at Rabobank at the moment, you're up in Darwin.
Yeah, that's right, Ricky. We got the Northern Territory Cattlemen Association annual conference up here, so great to be able to catch up with a lot of the guys in the NT and have a chat to them about what's going on in their industry, live export.
Yeah, what is happening in that industry? Things seem to be back on four legs again in terms of getting things offshore and moving to the markets they need it to get to.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing that boats are leaving. Northern Territory is similar to the rest of the country, really. There are lower cattle numbers up here at the moment, and with the demand that's in the market, we've got very high cattle prices for those live export cattle as well. So, yeah, lower numbers and high prices, similar to the other stories in the rest of the country, but boats are moving.
Yep, and so what's happening generally on the cattle market across Australia, particularly for our listeners in the southeast of the country?
Yeah, look, I mean, the cattle market sort of seems to be in a little bit of a tread water phase at the moment. We're seeing cattle prices sort of plateau and track sideways a bit at the moment. It does feel like maybe producers are just sort of reassessing their options at the moment and not as aggressive in purchasing cattle, and hence we've seen those prices sort of plateau and not continue up. But, we continue to have the same sort of situation, good seasonal conditions across large parts of the country, favourable cattle prices for those that are selling cattle. So things are still looking positive, but it feels like it's just sort of that inflection point at the moment where we just don't have that aggressive producer demand pushing prices further.
Mind you, the prices, the plateau we're sitting on is about 1,000 metres above the sea level it usually is when it comes to cattle prices.
That's right, and we mustn't forget that. We are still at record highs. Even if you adjust everything in for inflation, we're probably, from memory anyway, when I looked at it, better than the prices we saw back in the early 70s.
Wow, look, and has there been any indication that now as the flooding sort of recedes and infrastructure's restored that we're seeing cattle moving out of northern New South Wales, southern, southeastern Queensland again?
Yeah, we're seeing movement open up again, but there will be sort of ongoing challenges. I mean, not so much in cattle movement, but we've still got challenges with freight and logistics in the global sense. Access to and cost of containers and getting things on boats is always a bit of a challenge. So there are a few little headaches in terms of, beyond the processing plant and moving some of that meat around. But generally from a cattle point of view, I believe most roads are all open and we are seeing movement around the country again.
Yep, and what about how are things looking when we cross over to sheep? Are we seeing much change in terms of volume, or are people continuing to restock and hang on to what they've got there?
Yeah, look, I was in Victoria earlier this week, and there's still an ambition to restock and grow numbers, but we are actually seeing in terms of weekly slaughter numbers, we're back up to that 5-year average. So more lambs coming onto the market at the moment, which is encouraging. Would have thought after a couple of years of good seasons that we'd start to see that flow through. So we are. It does mean that we've seen lamb prices come off a little bit in the last sort of month or so, but they are about the same as what they were last year. So while they're not the record highs that we're talking from cattle point of view, they're still very strong prices.
Yeah, very solid. And I guess it's on the retail side, I imagine that's where we're going to start seeing more so the cost of fuel being factored into prices that consumers are paying, or is that starting to be seen as a dampener when it comes to cattle and sheep prices?
That cost inflationary pressure is going to start to flow through. The red meat, and particularly beef, we've seen some big jumps in retail prices over the last 2 years. Now with these cost inflationary pressures starting to work their way into the system, it is a question as to how far that consumer is willing to go in terms of any further increases in prices to accommodate those cost increases. So it's one we just have to keep an eye on. But yeah, as you know, fuel prices, chemical prices, fertilizer prices, all these things are starting to add up. And the logistic challenges are ongoing. So they will have to be passed through the supply chain. It's just a question, I suppose, of whether or not that consumer is willing to accommodate them all, or whether everyone else takes a bit of a margin cut in the process.
All right, well, plenty to keep our eye on there, and we might chat with you next time about plant proteins as well, a bit of movement on that front in southeastern Australia. Angus, thanks for joining us today from Darwin. Enjoy your time with the cattlemen.
Not a problem, Ricky. Always good to chat. Thank you.